Then Jesus says, and if any place will not receive you, and they will not listen to you when you leave, shake off the dust that is on your feet as a testimony against them. There will obviously be people who reject what the apostles are teaching. Shaking the dust off your feet was a traditional Jewish way of showing their distaste toward the Gentiles. Now I want you to see what's happening here. So the Jews, after traveling into the Gentile regions, before they entered back into the Holy Land, would shake the dust off their feet as a sign of them being unclean and them re-entering the Holy Land. The Jews did this as a symbolic protest against Gentiles. And Jesus told the apostles to do this as a sign of judgment against the Jews who rejected their message. You see how now it's turned back on them. As Christians, there eventually comes a point to where we have to do the same thing. When we are constantly sharing the gospel with people and they continue to reject it, we eventually have to do the same thing. It doesn't mean that we stop praying for them. But we do have to sense when it is time to dust off our feet and go to the next person. I have pleaded with people, individuals, to turn from sin and turn to Christ over and over again, and they care nothing about this message. There comes a point when someone has rejected, mocked, and blasphemed the God of the universe so many times that we have to dust off our feet and move on. And think about that for a second. Listen, God, in His grace and in His providence, has sent someone, one of His messengers, to them with the greatest news the world has ever known. That sinful man can be made right with a holy God. And they continue to reject this message time and time and time again. Not only do they reject it, but they often respond to it with laughter and mockery and blasphemy and slander. And that is a terrifying thing for them. Matthew expands on this in his gospel once again. He says this, in whatever town or village you enter, find out who is worthy in it and stay there until you depart. As you enter the house, greet it. And if the house is worthy, let your peace come upon it. But if it is not worthy, let your peace return to you. And if anyone will not receive you or listen to your words, shake off the dust from your feet and leave that house or town. Listen, this is verse 15 where really Matthew drives the point home. Truly I say to you, it will be more bearable on the day of judgment for the land of Sodom and Gomorrah than for that town. Those who in God's grace have received the truth of salvation and reject it will receive the most severe form of eternal punishment imaginable. That is exactly what Matthew is saying there. More severe than even Sodom and Gomorrah. Of course, we know about Sodom and Gomorrah, and we know what they were known for. Listen to this, just to paint the picture. This is found in Genesis. The two angels came to Sodom in the evening, and Lot was sitting in the gate of Sodom. When Lot saw them, he rose to meet them and bowed himself with his face to the earth and said, My lords, please turn aside to your servant's house and spend the night and wash your feet. Then you may rise up early and go on your way. They said, No, we will spend the night in the town square. But he, Lot, pressed them strongly. So they turned aside and said to him and entered his house. And He made them a feast and baked unleavened bread, and they ate. But before they lay down, listen, this is the scary part. The men of the city, the men of Sodom, both young and old, all the people to the last man surrounded the house. So they're surrounded. 2 angels of the Lord came to Lot, and He's keeping them in His house. And the men of Sodom, both young and old, every single one of them, surround the house. And they called to Lot, "Where are the men who came to you tonight? Bring them out to us that we may know them." I'm not going to go into detail there, but you should probably know what that means. Lot went out to the men at the entrance, shut the door after him, and said, "I beg you, my brothers, do not act so wickedly. Behold, I have 2 daughters who have not known any man. Let me bring them out to you, and do to them as you please. Only do nothing to these men, for they have come under the shelter of my roof." But they said, "Stand back." And they said, "This fellow came to sojourn, and he has become the judge. Now we will deal worse with you than with them." And they pressed hard against the man Lot, and drew near to break the door down. But the men reached out their hands and brought Lot into the house with them and shut the door. And they struck with blindness the men who were at the entrance of the house, both small and great, because they wore themselves out groping for the door. Listen, again, I don't have to go into graphic detail here. It's easy to understand what happened, what is happening. What every man, both young and old, wanted to do with God's angels. And eventually we see where God completely and justly destroys Sodom and Gomorrah. And yet, as severe as that was, it is nothing compared to the judgment and wrath that will be poured out on those who have heard the good news of the gospel time and time again and continue to reject it. Those who continue to reject the apostles brought judgment upon themselves, and the time would eventually come in which they just move on to another place.